Peace, peace. Greetings to you all. It's your brother Naheem, BKA Lord Abba, aka Mr. Just the Facts. Tonight, we're the Be the Power team is going to be going in on is not voting for Biden a vote for Trump. We're going to analyze the records of both of these guys. We're going to see if that's true. We're going to basically see if that narrative that's being spread is true. If you're watching on YouTube, hit the like button, subscribe, hit the little bell icon so you'll get notified every single time we go live. If you're on Facebook, hey, come on over to YouTube as well if you can. We're trying to build our numbers up on Facebook as well. So one of the things that we're going to do is we're going to start this by playing Joe Biden's crime bill speech on the floor. I think this is important for us to start this particular show off with. So let us get into what Biden had to say while he was on the floor pushing this devastating crime bill that really just destroyed our families. All right, let's go.
Take back streets. It doesn't matter whether or not the person that is accosting your son or daughter or my son or daughter, my wife, your husband, my mother, your parents. It doesn't matter whether or not they were deprived as a youth. It doesn't matter or not whether or not they had no background that enabled them to become socialized into the fabric of society. It doesn't matter whether or not they're the victims of society. The end result is they're about to knock my mother on the head with a lead pipe, shoot my sister, beat up my wife, take on my sons. So I don't want to ask what made them do this. They must be taken off the street. That's number one. There's a consensus on that. Unless we do something about that cadre of young people, tens of thousands of them, born out of wedlock, without parents, without supervision, without any structure, without any conscience developing, because they literally, I yield myself 3 more minutes, because they literally have not been socialized. They literally have not had an opportunity. We should focus on them now. If we don't, they will, or a portion of them will, become the predators 15 years from now. And Madam President, we have predators on our streets that society has, in fact, in part because of its neglect, created. Again, it does not mean because we created them that we somehow forgive them or do not take them out of society to protect my family and yours from them. They are beyond the pale, many of those people. Beyond the pale. And it's a sad commentary on society. We have no choice but to take them out of society. And the truth is, we don't very well know how to rehabilitate them at that point. That's the sad truth. I'm the guy that said, rehabilitation, when it occurs, we don't understand it and notice it. And even when we notice it and we know it occurs, we don't know why. So you cannot make rehabilitation a condition for release. That's why in our system, there's the federal system, you serve 85% of your time. It's a shame, but we don't know how to rehabilitate. But there is a consensus, and I will cease. A, we must make the streets safer. I don't care why someone is a malefactor in society. I don't care why someone is antisocial. I don't care why they've become a sociopath. We have an obligation to cordon them off from the rest of society, try to help them, try to change their behavior. That's why we do in this bill. We have drug treatment and we have other treatments to try to deal with it. But they are in jail, away from my mother, your husband, our families. But we would be absolutely stupid as a society if we didn't recognize the condition that nurtured those folks still exist. and we must deal with that.
Wow. I mean, just listening to that again, oh man, it's just, this man basically spoke about us as if we were just animals, right? But animals that they created. He says that although society created them, many of these people, using his language, are beyond the pale. For the people that say, I should vote for that man just because you don't like Trump. I think Trump is horrible insofar as him being everything that they say that he is. But for you to try and tell me that I should vote for that man right there, that Joe Biden, the guy that believes he can dictate who is black and who is not in America, the guy that said that I want these people locked up. Yeah, we could rehabilitate them, but I want them in jail. If you think that he is a better alternative than Donald Trump, you simply do not know politics at all. You don't care to know, and you don't care to understand. So one of the things that we're going to do tonight is we're going to get into a little bit of Donald Trump tonight. We're going to kind of throw a little curveball. I'm going to go in on Trump tonight. My brother George, introduce yourself real quick before I start serving both of these guys up.
Peace, family. Peace, family. This is Josh Gray L. I'm from the DC area. And, we've been doing this show since for the last couple of months. Be the Power is my brother Naheem's brainchild. But, we've been building over several years. And this is something that we knew we wanted to bring to the people, especially after we came across the information going through the ADOS school of thought and reading books and being a part of that community and getting a political education. We started to see that, a lot of the things that and we've always, the values we've always had, the things we always knew that people needed to understand now is really more pertinent, and we can center it around politics and taking action and doing agenda-based politics. And I think this show right here, what we want to get the core of what we want everybody to understand is just, we're going to get into it. We're going to make our points, but I want to say that just because you see so many people going in on Joe Biden right now, that's not to be confused as we're running to Trump. Because we got to understand, if you want to run from one way, or even if you were never that way, what are you running to? So instead of us being more concerned about doing party-based politics, we think that it's only two parties, either you're Democrat or you're Republican. We need to start being more focused on doing agenda-based politics, which means, what is your agenda? Now, we already know that most of our people vote for Democrats at a higher clip. And it's not, we're not unrealistic to think that something you're going to hear on this, or something that we say on this show is going to flip all of those people to do something, just flip on the switch and all those people are going to act a certain way. No, but we have to make the effort. We have to show people that we need to become the power and stop just allowing us to power everybody else's party. We need to become the power. So we're going to talk about that on the show.
Definitely. I want to start with, I'm trying to create this banner. I thought I had it going for whatever reason, and it just didn't go. So I'm going to add it real quick. Okay, there we go. There's a non-vote for Biden, a vote for Trump. So this is what I want to do. I want to kind of get into the crux of Biden, and then I want to move into Trump, right? So we want to kind of flip this thing a little bit just to show a contrast, because you have liberal politics and you have conservative politics. You have centrist politics, which is basically the centrist politics and centrist politicians lean right. Most independents lean right. Most Green Party candidates lean right. The only other way to lean is far, far left. And if you're not far, far left, you're branded as a corporate Democrat. This is some of the stuff that I've been learning over the past 2 years. And it really breaks down the whole structure of white supremacy and the fact that it appears, I don't even want to say appears, that's the wrong word, that what they are doing is trying to keep our people at the bottom. So I want to briefly go to this article on the Atlantic, in the Atlantic, excuse me. So let's go here real quick. The crime bill debate shows how short Americans' memories are. This was published in September 12th, 2019. September 12th, 2019. Let's get into this real quick. It says, in hindsight, complicated policy conversations get flattened into stark shades of right and wrong. That language sounds interesting because, you know, we hear a lot of people from the ADOS movement speak, particularly Yvette and Tone, speak about flattened blackness. So when I read, in hindsight, complicated policy conversations get flattened into stark shades, right? Because blackness is that issue here. And I'm not saying that this is what this subtitle implies. I'm just saying that it's hard not to relate or correlate this language with some of the conversation that's going on within the ADOS group, and it's fitting. So let's read, and I'm not going to go through this whole thing. I'm just going to briefly touch on some of this stuff. It says, it was a moment that may come back to haunt Joe Biden, perhaps as soon as tonight's Democratic debate. In an earlier round this summer, Senator Cory Booker of New Jersey wheeled on the former vice president, attacking his sponsorship of the 1994 crime bill with a roundhouse punch. Quote, there are people right now in prison for life for drug offenses, end quote, Booker said, quote, because you stood up and used that tough on crime, phony rhetoric that got a lot of people elected but destroyed communities like mine, end quote. This is, that right there is enough, right? That right there is a whole conversation. We can make a whole 2-hour show just out of what Booker said in relation to the crime bill and the devastating effects that it had on our communities. It says, Booker said, because you stood up and used that tough on crime, phony rhetoric that got a lot of people elected but destroyed communities like mine. Now, if you think about it, if you've read Michelle Alexander's The New Jim Crow, I urge everybody, read that book. I'll listen to it on Audible. You have to. It is a must read. She breaks this down, as we would say back in old hip hop, to the very last compound. She goes so deep into how this, not just this crime bill, Biden just added steroids to the already racial subjugation that quote unquote white supremacy was already doing to our people, and how this language was politicized from war on crime to war on drugs, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And Cory Booker, rightfully so, called him out on that. The Atlantic article reads, it's true that the bill, which extended the death penalty to 60 new crimes, stiffened sentences, offered states strong financial incentives for building new prisons, and banned a range of assault rifles, helped lead to the wave of mass incarceration that's resulted in the United States accounting for 25% of the world's prison population. I'm gonna come out of that real quick. There are more men locked up in the United States of America, more of our men than women incarcerated collectively all over the planet Earth. That shows you that there's a design here. And Joe Biden he comes from old segregationists. His friend was Strom Thurmond. Look this man up. And this was like his best friend. That language that Biden was talking on the House floor that we see or heard in the beginning of this show, that was that old Jim Crow segregationist language. And if you go look at any speeches of Strom Thurmond, you'll see that they're comparable with what Biden said on the floor that day. So I want to go into Jeff Sessions real quick. When Trump becomes the president and appoints him, and then I want to bring you in, Josh, because I want to weave back and forth Biden and Trump, because they're telling me and you and everybody like us, particularly ADOS, that we have to make this choice. We have to choose Joe Biden. So let me go to my screen share real quick, pull this up. Okay. It says, Jeff Sessions, this is coming from The Guardian. This was published May 12th of 2017. This is after Trump gets elected. So this is 5 months into his presidency, after he gets sworn in. Jeff Sessions enacts harsher sentencing and charges in criminal justice overhaul. The Attorney General calls for prosecutors, to charge and pursue the most serious, readily provable offense, and a major reversal of Obama-era policies. It reads, Attorney General, Jeff Sessions. I'm a little hyped. This topic got me hyped right now, so I'm kind of stumbling a little bit. So forgive me, people. I'm gonna tone it down a little bit. Attorney General Jeff Sessions is directing federal prosecutors to pursue the most serious charges possible against the vast majority of suspects, a reversal of Obama-era policies that is sure to send more people to prison and for much longer terms. The move has long been expected from Sessions, a former federal prosecutor who cut his teeth at the height of the crack cocaine epidemic and who has promised to make combating violence and drugs the Justice Department's top priority. This policy, it quotes, this policy affirms our responsibility to enforce the law, is moral and just, and produces consistency. So when it says that Sessions cut his teeth at the height of the crack cocaine epidemic, we're talking about the era of Reagan. We're talking about the war on drugs. The war on drugs becomes your war on crime in the 1990s. They were all repackaged versions of racial policies to lock up as many of our people as they can. And this has been going on since Jim Crow, since convict leasing. I mean, now we could go all the way back, but the language doesn't get politicized in the way that it does until the Nixon era, when they say we can't be blatantly racist. We have to start using these code words. And so they have these war on crime and war on drugs, et cetera, et cetera. Brother Josh, please add on to that. And, what is your take on the Biden and Trump narrative? Start with that before you kind of go in with people saying that we have to choose Biden, because if we don't choose this devil, then the devil that's in office is going to remain in office, as if that helps any of us.
Yeah, again, I mean, we need to do agenda-based politics as opposed to party-based politics. And I think when you try to box me into a corner where say I have to pick one or the other, first off, I need to, what we're doing, and the whole key of what we're talking about is an exchange. That language talking about an exchange, you notice, you don't really remember hearing that language in the 2016 election. You don't really remember hearing that language in the 2012 or the 2008 elections or any before that. We're hearing that now, right? And I think part of the reason we're hearing that is, number one, well, of course, there's an ADOS movement that popped up that we said we have access to the economic data. We break the data down pretty much on every single show, right? We talk about we have the economic data now. So we know that we're at the bottom. We know that the middle, in case you haven't been around, the middle Black family, if you take out depreciating assets, is worth $1,700. White America is over 100,000, right? As a group, Black America has 3%, $3 trillion worth of wealth, which is 2.6% of the wealth. White America has 100 trillion, which is 90% of the wealth. And we built the country, went through chattel slavery, Jim Crow, Black Code, all this kind of crazy stuff. Now we talk about mass incarceration through Joe Biden. Been through all of that. So how is it that you're telling, like, everybody's telling us what we have to do? You don't get to tell us anything what we have to do. So we're now saying that, okay, we understand, we have documentation showing our disparities. It's not no more games. It was no longer it's denied, right? So we're demanding an exchange to fix our issues. We're demanding that from Joe Biden. Now, let me say this about Trump. Just because we're demanding this from Joe Biden and he's not obliging right now, we have to understand our moment of leverage. Our moment of leverage is not going to come. It's not going to come. We can't ruin this moment, right? The vote is what we have to leverage with. We use our vote and we get something in exchange for our vote. But all y'all telling us that we don't have any choice because we don't want Trump. So we just lay down and ask Joe Biden for nothing. So here's another thing. Even if you are, we're not trying. Even if you're the people that are going to vote blue, no matter who. No, anyway, you still should be asking for an exchange. What's the problem with asking for an exchange? What's the problem with joining us in demanding policy from Biden? If we're going to vote for him anyway, if you know you're going to vote, get something in exchange for the vote. Don't just give it away for nothing just because of Trump. At least make the voice loud so he will oblige. Put some pressure on him. Play the game. You don't even want to play the game. So and let me flip that, talking about Trump. And I'm going to build right into this article I'm going to go in. But we're like, for all y'all talking about Trump, understand, for Trump to get the vote, he's already in office. Like, he should have already done his exchange. Don't tell me what he did just because Obama and everybody before him set the bar so low. I'm gonna go in on policy. Set the bar so low that Trump can easily just throw us a couple bones and we supposed to jump and say hallelujah, he's a savior. No, that don't work like that. He's already in office now. So for him to get the vote, it ain't gonna be no exchange where you're gonna do something in the future. You need to do it now. We need to see the results now. If you try to get the vote. So all y'all talking about Trump for what? It's not party based. It's not being binary. For Trump, let me tell you what I think Trump needs to do. If you want the black vote, this is what Trump needs to do. He needs to go to ADOS101.com /black-agenda, right? And he needs to meet and get all of those things done, whether it can be done with his power or the power of Congress. He needs to get all of that done. Then he needs to go to ADOS101.com /roadmap to reparations. And he needs to implement all of that and get Congress to agree to all of that. Then if he does that before the November election, then I'll advocate for Trump. I mean, why not? He's met our agenda items. That, how in the world does it make sense to go? We're gonna show Trump.
Oh yeah, let me say before you pull up your screen. I used to listen to Rush Limbaugh, right? I used to listen to WSB radio when Obama was the president because I was studying logical fallacies and how to spot them, how to master argument. So I would get in the car and wherever I was driving to, whether it was going to pick the children up from school or to the supermarket, I would put on WSB radio. That's right-wing Republican radio. I would listen to Hannity and Eric Erickson and Rush Limbaugh. What's the pizza brother name? He had a segment on there too. The brother that sold pizza. I can't remember his name right now. It was a couple of them. Sean Hannity. I don't know if I mentioned him. and I would listen with the intent of trying to spot the arguments, right? So when I'm listening to people tell me that if I don't vote for Trump, if I don't vote for Biden, then I'm voting for Trump. I see these people trying to do to me what right-wing radio does to their audience. And what they have to know is that we're not stupid. And one of the things that Rush Limbaugh used to say was most of the electorate are uninformed. And he would lean that more towards the left side, the Democratic side, but he would also say that about the right as well. And he would say that's why he was doing his very right-leaning show to help lean those who were right more right. And y'all are not going to lean us left just because you think that we're a captured electorate. We're waking up one by one by one by one. We're waking up. And then those of us that have some type of a voice, we're going to keep speaking this truth to power until we wake up the next one. Or as we used to say when I was a young 5%er, each one teach one, God. Yo, go ahead, John.
Yeah, so and I wanted to say I'm like looking at these comments, but let me just go. I'm gonna move on to build on that point. You know, understanding. Well, since I'm talking about Trump, I'm just gonna keep rolling with Trump because I wanted to go since you were talking about Joe Biden. So I moved it on to Trump so we can go on to Trump. Then I'm gonna come back to Biden, and I got something I want to share with that. But let me just share my screen because I think we need to understand and just get a quick memory. I know mostly mainstream media is spends all the time breaking down on Trump. But a lot of us don't watch mainstream media. I don't watch. I catch a few clips of mainstream media. Sometimes I like to watch a good Rachel Maddow story here and there.
Oh, yeah. I like Rachel Maddow.
Netflix.
I like how she breaks stuff down.
Yeah, she's a good storyteller and all of that.
Other than that, she's one of them. So
yeah, exactly.
The scholar in me likes how she does her. How she sets up her set, her blocks.
She's a good storyteller. I mean, that's what it is. She's a good storyteller and narrator. And she comes from different angles. It's like you watch a movie and you like all these beginnings in the movies are different. So, but let me just share this because I think it's not just the simple things that they talk about all the time. It's I remember Yvette Carnell always talked about she quoted Elizabeth Warren, and she was saying politics is personnel. But you got to look at the Trump personnel. I just want to just one element of it, and this is talking about. That's not what I wanted to say. This is it right here. Black people are 75% more likely to live near toxic oil and gas facilities, right? So then you got to think about who is Trump putting in charge of the EPA? Is he putting somebody in there that's pro conservation of the environment? Is that person about trying to fix any of this? Or is he somebody that's working for like the oil and gas companies? I think he put Rick Perry when he first got in office. I can't remember. I can't remember who's in there now. But let's just look at this. One of those communities is West Port Arthur, Texas, a town that is 95% Black and home to 2 oil refineries that process more than 900,000 barrels of crude oil every day. Valero is a refinery, one of the largest in the world, and borders the town. Several low-income public housing complexes mostly house Black residences. West Port Arthur is in Jefferson County, where cancer rates among Black people are 15% higher than those of the average Texan. These residents are 40% more likely to die from the disease. So, is he putting in somebody in there that stopped that, or is he put somebody in there that put that on, as Tone talks about mass incarceration, that put that on roller skates? Well, we already know that the saying goes is to never waste a good opportunity for crisis. And I don't know if y'all saw this, but EPA regulations, COVID-19. Let me just search this real quick. I forgot to bring it up. Yeah, they just basically. I'm not even gonna look for it because maybe this is it. Yeah, basically the EPA, they relaxed all the regulations on like all these environmental protection regulations. I ain't gonna say all of them because I don't know if we have anybody that's technical online and gonna break down the legislation, but they pretty much eased up on if you have to meet some type of EPA regulation. Basically, if you have to do some type of toxic dumping and coronavirus has caused your business costs to go up, and that will hurt, it's hurting your business, they won't prosecute you. They just let you get away with in poisoning our communities even further. And that's something they snuck through that most people didn't see. And I want to find it because I don't want anybody to accuse me of making it up. Just look it up on your own. But so that's just one example. Another example was, okay, who are the people that are behind his policy, and who are the people that are on his campaign last time that kind of brought him to prominence and actually stuck him in the platform he has now. I mean, we know it was Stephen Miller, Steve Bannon. These are type of serious racists. If you just look at the people, look at this right here. This is a chart that says, I don't know if y'all can see. Let me zoom in a little bit. Let me zoom in. Let me zoom in. All right, it says, here we go. Predicted probability of voting for Trump based on values of economic dissatisfaction, racism, sexism. So as you can see, the people that are the most satisfied are probably going to vote for, at least likely to vote for Trump. People that are the least satisfied, people that are the most acknowledging of racism, the most are the least likely to vote for Trump. The people that are the most denying of racism are the most likely to vote for Trump. See, this is stuff we already know. This stuff we already know, right? We already know that. It's like common sense and common knowledge. But we gotta remind y'all because you see this stuff come out and you think it's forcing you to move one way or the other. It's not. You got to stay on your square and do politics based on your agenda. And if your agenda is not being served, then what sense does it make you supporting that candidate? That's what I want to say. But I just want to send it back to you. I know you got something you probably want to go in.
Yeah, I mean, I got a bunch of little things that I want to run through because I want the people to understand that the things that Trump is doing right now as the president, it's not some new thing. It's that we have become a little bit more politically aware in this day and time. Trump has helped that, believe it or not. He has done some crazy stuff. He has said some crazy stuff, and he dominates the news cycle in a way that no other president has. So the spotlight gets shown on a lot of stuff, right? So just to use a blanket term that we may have been ignoring for the past 2 or 3 administrations. So was no different under the Obama years while, Biden was the president. Biden was the vice president. I'm getting tongue-tied. What was the difference? We just watched a man get his neck, a knee to the neck, saying, I can't breathe. And the cop just like, I don't care, looking at the crowd like, y'all not going to do nothing. 8 minutes, he had this man's knee on his neck until he died. This was happening under Obama so much, I could never understand why Obama wouldn't push greater justice reform. Biden was the VP. He gave kudos to Obama for passing the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare, but where was the prison reform? Where was police reform? Where was these things? These things were virtually non-existent under that administration. And the little bit that they did do, Trump comes right in and rolls back because it's systemic and it's easy to do, right? It's seamless. So let's get into this, right? Some people say, well, the First Step Act, the First Step Act, somebody put that in the chat. That's why I put it up on the screen. I don't know if they were trying to be facetious or what, but we're gonna, let's look at this thing for what it is. Let's separate the wheat from the chaff. It says, this is coming from the Washington Post. This is published November 7th, 2019. It says, Trump boasts that his landmark law is freeing these inmates. His Justice Department wants them to stay in prison. It reads, let me blow this up a little bit more. It says, the 5 former inmates assembled on the White House stage weren't scheduled to speak, but President Trump couldn't help himself. Where's Gregory? Greg, he said, come on, get up here. From behind the president, Gregory Allen saluted and then made his way to the microphone. 2 months ago, I was in a prison cell, and I'm in the White House, declared Allen, a Florida resident who had been freed under Trump's signature criminal justice legislation. Quote, that's continuing to make America great again, end quote. Because if somebody doing something for you, I mean, even if it's the devil, we teach in our Moorish lessons, it says the people were trying to demand a test from Jesus, the devil actually, in the 40 days and 40 nights. We tell our story a little bit different. And Jesus says, who is it that demands a test? The devil can do mighty things. So yeah, freeing somebody, you make a lifetime bond with a person that you just let out of jail. But let's read on. It says the Justice Department, though, had never wanted to let Allen out of prison. In fact, as he and Trump shared a joyous embrace on television, federal prosecutors were trying to persuade a judge to put Allen back behind bars. The president has repeatedly pointed to the First Step Act as one of his administration's chief bipartisan achievements, and one for which he is personally responsible. But cases like Allen's expose a striking rift between the White House allies who supported the law and the Justice Department officials now working to limit the number of inmates who might benefit from it. Quote, DOJ is pushing against the will of the people, the will of Congress, the will of the president, said Holly Harris, a conservative activist and leader of the Justice Action Network who worked with Congress and the White House to pass the law. It was something else in here that I wanted to read. Matter of fact, let's go here. The First Step Act claims to lessen long-standing disparities in punishment for non-violent drug offenses involving crack cocaine, having 5 grams of crack, a form of cocaine that is more common among black drug users, used to carry the same mandatory minimum sentence as having 500 grams of powder cocaine, which is more common among white drug users. But federal prosecutors are arguing in hundreds of cases that inmates who have applied for this type of relief are ineligible, according to a review of court records and interviews with defense attorneys. In at least half a dozen cases, prosecutors are seeking to reincarcerate offenders who have been released under the First Step Act. It shows us that this is a toothless tiger that Trump is touting to our people. That and I hear these so-called black conservatives, you say you're a black Republican, I'm fine with that. When you say that you're a black conservative, what are you conserving exactly? I'm not fine with that. So you're going to always be called a fake black conservative or a so-called black conservative by my mouth. So we see that this bill is a toothless tiger, because while Trump is touting this thing as some major victory, his Justice Department is behind the scenes trying to put the very people that they're freeing right back in prison. I don't hear brother Isaiah Washington talking about that. He was one of the people on Twitter. I used to rock with Isaiah Washington, the actor, until he just went like super duper Trump on us. But again, we understand the dissatisfied or disaffected Democrat. But to go so deep into that political sphere without understanding what's going on is irresponsible and reckless. So did you want to add anything to that or bring up anything?
Yeah. I'm man. Look, let me share my screen real quick, because it was talked about Charlemagne the God. I want to give him credit for taking the message that we've been talking about for over a year, or some people have been talking about. I mean, I've been talking about it for over a year. And Charlemagne the God, I mean, people in the ADOS movement probably been talking about it longer than that, because I just came into the ADOS when you hit me up, like, I think it was like January of last year or something. I was like, what? Yeah, exactly what we was talking about. You know what I mean?
What we talking? They just talking it a little bit better.
Yeah, especially like with the Morris movie, like our understanding of that stuff is coming from a logical and like perspective that is usable, and not like the crazy stuff you hear about when people talking about. I ain't gonna even get into it, but yeah. So that's where Charlemagne got that from, and I'm glad that he's using his platform to speak on it. I don't know what necessarily his motivations are. I don't know how well read he is. I don't know if he's prepared, for what's going to come at him or the responsibility. I don't know if he's going to be here today and gone tomorrow, but I'm glad he said it now, and we're going to keep on building on that. Hopefully he bigs up those who've been behind it, pushing the message. If not, we still gonna be here. But let me just go back, because one of the things, the reason I brought him up is because he actually went to a meeting with I think it was Tim Scott, or it might have been Trump, with T.I., and I think they were talking about opportunity zones. And I think we have to be careful, because if you don't study history, you can be victim to being a part of the misinformation campaign, the social engineering campaign, and you can repeat the mistakes of people that came before you. Like, we haven't done the show, we talked about it, but like one mistake that we saw Elijah Muhammad made when he promoted Richard Nixon. We're not going to go into that, but he was promoting the ideas of Richard Nixon's Black capitalism program. And today's iteration of that, see, it used to be called empowerment zones, or enterprise zones. Then it came under all these different names through Ronald Reagan, through Bill Clinton, through Barack Obama. Now today's iteration through Donald Trump is opportunity zones. Okay, so let me break down the opportunity zones, and let me just read you a clip from an author of a book that we read through our book club. It's a lady named Marissa Burrata, and she wrote a book called Color of Money: Black Banking and the Racial Wealth Gap. Let me just share the screen real quick, and I'm gonna read you because the reason I'm gonna read it is because she breaks it down like perfectly for you to understand the scam that this thing is. All right, so yeah, I think it's on, if you want to go to this link right here, I believe you can watch the video, but I'm gonna read the transcript. And she's talking about enterprise opportunity zones. She says, I think opportunity zones are what Malcolm X or James Baldwin would call the ghetto. They are segregated Black spaces that were segregated by force over a long time. And the idea of calling them opportunity zones was a very short of neoliberal capitalist spin on a history of racism and segregation. And it was President Nixon who came up with the idea of, we'll just have capitalism. And so he called it Black capitalism. Understand, that was with no capital. You got to read the history on that. And then you have Ronald Reagan calling it enterprise zones, and Bill Clinton calling it opportunity zones, and to Trump. So it's a very straight line from Nixon to Reagan to Clinton to Donald Trump. So this is not new. Trump is specifically a housing developer who has a history of preying on communities of color. We know that's a throwaway term. By the way, if you're watching this, we don't use the term communities of color. We use the term, we like to be specific. And if we're talking about things that are affecting us, we use the term ADOS, American Descendants of Slavery, because we got a unique contribution. We went through a unique justice claim, right? We have a unique justice claim. So it says using his housing development and being very exclusionary. So this idea of this tax plan is to give tax cuts to big private equity firms and corporations to buy properties in these Black segregated spaces. So who benefits is these big companies. And how do they benefit? They get tax cuts from their tax liability. So they should be paying into fund. And we're saying, hey, if you buy into this area, you don't pay the taxes that you're supposed to pay. Crazy, right? So it's sort of a double whammy. One is you're sort of increasing gentrification. You're speeding that up by buying a property that could otherwise go to the residents of those areas, the historic residents. And two, you're actually diminishing your tax payouts into a common fund that we can actually use to build up the public facilities in these areas. So it is a scam. It is a common scam. It is one that we've been seeing a lot. It's not Trump's doing, but it is not a benefit to these communities. And it's talking about Trump and and so it's saying opportunity zones. I think something that the advocates of opportunity zones will say is that these companies do bring jobs. Okay, so let's dispel that myth. So I think that we do have to recognize that, yes, when a company moves into when Harlem got a Whole Foods or when Baltimore gets these big companies, they do bring jobs. But I want to make sure we're not misunderstanding who benefits. I mean, jobs is labor, it's not capital. So Adam Clayton Powell and other historical leaders in these spaces will say, yes, if you're going to be a white company in the Black space, you have to hire the residents of the area. But it's much better if you can own the land. Malcolm X is very clear on this. It's about land. You have to have the equity. And so when you have a company coming in buying the land and the equity and the capital, yes, there are labor benefits. You do have more jobs, but jobs don't actually lead to wealth. Specifically, those sorts of jobs. Some jobs do, very good paying jobs do. But that's not the type of things we're talking about when we're talking about these big retail establishments coming or big developments coming in. It's usually we're talking about capital staying where capital always stays, which is with the people who started out with it. Understand that. So she basically is saying, if you're saying that he's marketing that as some pro-Black policy, it is a scam. It is meant to pour gasoline on the fire that is burning through our communities, the gentrification fire that is burning through our communities. It's pouring gasoline on it. It's giving a tax cut. So, we see a problem where schools are being underfunded. So let me get this right. The big company comes in, they buy up huge plots of land to, like Amazon was trying to go in Brooklyn because they got the tax cuts. And notice they didn't do that before the tax cuts. They did it after the tax cuts. We talk about probably the largest company in the world, one of them with owned by the wealthiest man in the world that wants to not pay the taxes. I understand that all of us don't want to pay taxes, but you got to understand, like, how does that affect you? So when these companies come in and they buy up all this land that people cannot access and they don't pay taxes into it, what happens to your schools? What happens to the schools surrounding in those areas? They get underfunded. Well, that also fits in with the agenda of trying to move to charter schools and trying to move to schooling online. And all those things hurt us disproportionately. So, like, we're saying all these things to say, like, just because we're banging on Joe Biden, because we're right, we have every reason and right to do that, is not saying that Trump is, like, you can't misrepresent what Trump means to us either. Like, that doesn't work. So for all y'all on the right that's trying to do that, see, understand this too. Trump is not necessarily trying to get the Black vote. Giving us policy is actually counterproductive to his base. His base, all his people went, largely the white supremacists that left the Democratic Party and went over to the Republican Party. I just showed you a chart that showed you the more racist people are, the more likely they are to be hostile against, to vote for Trump, because they want something that's hostile to our best interests. And so how does it make sense? So again, Trump doesn't want to get the Black vote, but he wants the Black vote to not vote really, or to give him just a little bit, just enough to where he can remain in office.
That's right.
That's not a Black agenda. That's not tangible. Like, that doesn't work for me. So don't tell me nothing about Trump. But at the same time, so now he's out the window, right? So now Joe Biden, you don't get to just get my vote either. You have to give me an agenda. This stuff that we showing you that Trump is a problem. Notice I don't really see Joe Biden talking about any of these issues that affect us. That like I'm talking about how Trump has done things that disproportionately affect us. You don't see Joe Biden like juxtaposing his policy to that and showing how it's better.
He keeps saying it. He keeps saying you can put my record up against
black vote. I'm gonna get the black vote.
Uh-huh.
You gonna get the black vote because you're a Democrat, because you attached to Obama and all this kind of stuff. That doesn't work for us though. That's for the work for the ones that's gonna vote blue no matter who. That's not a part of this space and thinking. Yeah, opportunity zones are definitely tax cuts for the rich.
I want to get into that. Let me get into that. Mm-hmm. I want to go to this New York Times article because it's really telling, and I want to go into the meeting that T.I. and Charlemagne had because it sort of factors into this whole thing. Because when people tell me that a non-vote for Biden, who was Obama's VP for 8 years, that did nothing for our communities economically, our wealth began to decline under Barack Obama. If I'm reading the charts right, starting in 2010, and it's on a steady decline at the median on down, so that by the year 2053, we will be at zero wealth. So you have evil on one hand and you have evil on the other hand. So let's get into this. How Trump tax breaks, how a Trump tax break to help poor communities became a windfall for the rich. Let's read this. This is the New York Times, or what Trump calls the failing New York Times. August 31st, 2019, this article was published. New Orleans. President Trump has portrayed America's cities as wastelands, ravaged by crime and homelessness, infested by rats. No reparations, right? No, we ain't talking no reparation. He was against that. Like, nah. Okay, let me finish. But the Trump administration's signature plan to lift them, a multi-billion-dollar tax break that is supposed to help low-income areas, has fueled a wave of developments financed by and built for the wealthiest Americans. Wait a minute. Wait, let me finish reading. Among the early beneficiaries of the tax incentive are billionaire financiers like Leon Cooperman and business magnates like Sidney Cole and Mr. Trump's family members and advisors. Well, of course, they're invested. Trump has smashed to bits the Constitution's emoluments clause. That is no longer a thing anymore. They might as well just scratch that out of the Constitution. Let me finish. Former Governor Chris Christie of New Jersey, Richard Lefrak, a New York real estate titan who is close to the president, Anthony Scaramucci, a former White House aide who recently had a falling out with Mr. Trump, and the family of Jared Kushner, Mr. Trump's son-in-law and senior advisor, are all looking to profit from what is shaping up to be a once-in-a-generation bonanza for elite investors, not regular investors, elite investors. The stated goal of the tax benefit, tucked into the Republicans' 2017 tax cut legislation, was to coax investors to pump cash into poor neighborhoods known as opportunity zones, leading to new housing, businesses, and jobs. The initiative allows people to sell stocks or other investments. Now, let me stop. The people who are able to buy stocks are not coming from the areas where these places are allegedly, purportedly being rehabilitated, because I haven't seen any rehabilitation projects yet. Not one. It continues. It says, opportunity zones, how this thing going? Providing massive new incentives for investment and job creation in distressed communities, Mr. Trump declared at a recent rally in Cincinnati. Instead, the Times article notes, billions of untaxed investment profits are beginning to pour into high-end high-end apartment buildings and hotels, storage facilities that employ only a handful of workers, and student housing and bustling college towns, among other projects. So when people say, if you don't vote for Biden, it's a vote for Trump, then you got the black conservatives, or excuse me, the so-called black conservatives, the black Republicans, on the other hand, trying to push us into these party politics. What you have to understand is that either way, we are in a lose-lose. And if we don't make a statement and not vote based on the way the media wants us to vote, go back and just look at this whole primary. MSNBC, or what they call MSDNC, because they act like the media arm for the Democratic Party in the same way that Fox News acted as the media arm for the Republican Party and Donald Trump. They pushed Bernie Sanders out. Now, Bernie wasn't for reparations, so more than likely he wasn't going to get my vote. I will say this, and I could be criticized for it, his class-based initiatives would have been better than the nothing that Biden has given us through his crime bill. I mean, if we're being honest, those class-based initiatives would have done a little bit. It wouldn't have cured our issues at all. The things that Trump is doing is not helping us at all. So it's like, I shouldn't be forced to vote for any of them. We didn't give you Trump in the first place. White America did. Y'all asked us to vote for Hillary after y'all pushed Bernie Sanders out in 2016. Y'all did the same exact play, expecting a different result. Now this guy's on there talking about people are not black enough if they don't vote for him. No, not black enough, that they're not black, because they know that our people are a captured electorate and that they could disrespectfully talk to us any way that they will, but that day is over. So before I bring my brother Josh back in, I want to go to T.I. and Charlemagne's meeting with the Republicans on this whole opportunity zone thing. Let's blow this up a little bit, because this is important right here. All right, T.I. and Charlemagne the God discuss economic investments in black communities on Capitol Hill. This was published May 22nd, 2019, almost a year ago to the day. Washington. The artist and entrepreneur T.I. and radio show host Charlemagne the God visited Capitol Hill Wednesday to talk about economic investments in African-American communities as part of a group that included David Gross and Los Angeles City Councilman Marquise Harris Dawson. Throughout Wednesday, the group took part in congressional meetings and in an opportunity zone minority investors summit that included Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin. Their day culminated in a meeting with the Congressional Black Caucus. The late musician Nipsey Hussle had originally planned to be in Washington, D.C. to discuss the same issues, but after his slaying at the end of March, the group went on with the meetings to carry on his mission. And Brother Antonio Moore did a video showing that while what Nipsey Hussle did in his neighborhood was commendable, it was honorable, it was still a carryover of racist policies. Now, he may not have known that, but Brother Josh just read from Marissa, I always mess her last name up, Burrata's book, The Color of Money, right? About the language of what opportunity zones are and how that language changes from administration to administration. I just read the expose from the New York Times that showed that these tax breaks were nothing but windfalls for millionaires and billionaires for them to dump investments into, and that the monies, a large part of the monies, were just going into private industries like hotels and other places where there are very few employees. So they're reaping they're getting a check, basically, that you would get to pay X amount of employees. They hire a few employees and keep the money while the neighborhoods are still looking the same. Donald Trump called Baltimore a rat-infested hellhole or something like that. Where are the opportunity zones at? You know, you got some brothers saying they building like Moorish villages in Baltimore. That's funny. Ain't no money in Baltimore to build anything. Anyway, let me finish reading from this point, right? T.I. says, I was born in an opportunity zone, and I've been making significant investments and contributions to the community that I have called home for all my life that is now zoned as an opportunity zone. So Clifford Harris, who goes by the stage name T.I., quote, I don't want to be just another gentrifier that comes in, gets rich, buy these communities, and pushes these people out. Continue, Charlemagne. Well, then what are you doing, bro? Did you not research this? Did you not research any of this before you went in? Like I said, this show is to show a contrast that Biden and Trump is the same. And 2 shows ago, I broke down Biden's black agenda. I compared it to his Latino agenda. I showed that his black agenda was class-based. It was people of color. It wasn't a black agenda at all. When it was time to say what will be done for us specifically, it used the language people of color, colored people. When in the Latino plan, when it was time to show or say what would be done for Latinos specifically, it said, we're going to do this for Latinos. We're going to do that for Latinos. There was no people of color. And in the black agenda, Latinos are included in the people of color. And as I said in that show, they will do a program for us and include everybody, including the Latinos. We have nothing against Latinos. We just saying we want what's ours. That's it. But then they will do something specific for Latinos that excludes us. What type of politics is this? The article said that the CBC was there at the meeting. So how didn't the CBC know, the Congressional Black Caucus know that this was nothing but a ruse creating a windfall for millionaires, to basically get tax breaks and tax incentives? Why would you push something like that? My lessons, the Moorish teaching says that your lawyers and your politicians basically have become useless cumberers of the earth. And that's what the Congressional Black Caucus are. They are useless cumberers of the earth. It's time for us to build up. It's time for us to mobilize, voter registration drives, et cetera, et cetera. Vote these people out. Yo, go ahead, brother Josh.
Yeah. Hold on a second. Yeah, man. Let me just pivot a little bit, because we had something that is real troubling to watch. I don't know if y'all seen. I'm sure y'all seen the brother that the police murdered in Minneapolis, Minnesota. They stepped on his neck with his knee, and dude was talking about I couldn't breathe, and he just kept on stepping on it. The dude lay there motionless for 8 minutes before he removed his knee, and the dude was dead. And you're probably wondering, like, okay, how does that relate to this conversation right here? Well, first off, we're asking. I mean, I want to hear what the presidential candidates have to say. I mean, I do want to hear what they have to say. But I mean, I look at it like, how is it still that kind of culture is emboldened today to still go on? We see it. I mean, you see that we're seeing this every week. We see, of course, now it's the presidential cycle. They may put more attention on it, but still, I mean, it needs to be attention to be put on this every time. Every time it needs maximum attention. We need to be blasting it. We need this to end. But I think part of the reason why that has not been addressed is due to the legacy of the crime bill and the legacy of mass incarceration, of beefing up, the policing, not addressing the issues that we deal with systemically. Not by us still never getting reparations, by us being a bottom caste and police are used to, like, it's a low likelihood that you'll get serious charges put on you, if any at all. And if you do, it's a high likelihood that you're not going to get convicted of murder or something of the sort. That's a fair judgment. And I want to go to something that I think I'm going to share this too right here. We gotta, like, we're sharing our screen because we want to talk about these things not just from our opinion, but from some good perspective that people put a whole lot of time into. So let me just read this right here. I'm gonna go all the way back up, because I think this is relevant. This is a Jacobin article on Joe Biden. Joe Biden was a leader in building up the carceral state. It says here, it was Labor Day weekend 1980 when a young motorist found himself being tailed by an irate Joe Biden. The young man had been speeding down an abandoned road when Joe Biden, attending a nearby birthday party at his sister's house, spotted him. Alarmed at the driver's recklessness when his and the other parents' kids were playing outside, and no doubt triggered by the trauma of the crash that had killed his first wife and baby daughter, Biden jumped in his car and chased him for more than half a mile, finally catching him across state lines in Pennsylvania. Making a citizen's arrest, Biden charged the 26-year-old with reckless driving in a magistrate court. He returned not once, but 3 more times to make sure the charge was filed in a case that he, having made the arrest, would have to personally prosecute. Biden only dropped the charge after the motorist started desperately calling him every day, telling him he was a hard worker. This is his one and only such joyride, and he could lose his license if convicted. Asked by the Wilmington News Journal after he dropped the case if he was just avoiding prosecuting a potential voter, Biden replied, I wouldn't have minded that. It would have been fun. And this wasn't the first time Biden had dabbled in some minor vigilante justice. 3 years earlier, he had chased down 2 purse snatchers and returned the stolen goods to the victim. But this incident was different in the lengths to which Biden went to make sure that one young motorist's irresponsible joyride would be punished by the criminal justice system. So I'm not going to go all down into that, but I'm going to skip down some because I just wanted to say, like, if you understand that, if you listen to that, and I'm not trying to say there's nothing wrong with making a citizen's arrest, but we just come from we're fresh off of the brother down Ahmaud Arbery, where people with the similar mentality thinking they're going to do some type of citizen's arrest. And we already know, I don't even want to even categorize that as a citizen's arrest, because that we can pretty much see from what came out later that was a targeted type murder. It was something else behind that. They just wanted to use the guise of a citizen's arrest. But that being on our mind, like, just thinking about associating that with a guy like Joe Biden. Now, granted, he didn't pull out a gun and kill a man, but that mentality, I can see how that type of guy will go and do this. So let me read it right here. It says, it's practically impossible to divorce the political issues in the United States from race. As everyone from newspaper reporters to sociologists would discover from the 1970s on, almost every hot button topic in the United States politics, including education, welfare, size of government, was in an era barely a few decades out from Jim Crow, deeply tied up with voters' racial attitudes. It was something Ronald Reagan had capitalized on in a presidential campaign that darkly signaled the conservative white voters that he understood their frustration over minorities supposedly gaming the system to get ahead. Now check this out. This is kind of what I want to get to. But perhaps no issues were more wrapped up in America's fraught history with race than crime and drugs. By the time the 1960s were over, listen to this, outright racism and support for American apartheid had become out of bounds, and conservatives needed a way to keep capitalizing on white voters' racist fears without coming across as defrocked Klansmen. The genuine guys in crime and drug use during the 1960s proved the most fertile ground. It is little wonder then that so many of Congress's most feared former segregationists so easily made the transition into tough on crime and drug warriors after the 60s. Through the late 1970s to 90s, those racist lawmakers will become some of Biden's most reliable allies in erecting today's U.S. Carceral state, one whose prison populations continues to dwarf the rest of the world's, including even dictatorship of Saudi Arabia and the one-party state of China. Those prisons will be filled disproportionately with the African Americans who bore the brunt of Middle America's increasing hysteria over crime, and who would often be forced to do back-breaking, dangerous work for no pay. The only version of slavery the 13th Amendment still allowed. See, if you understand like some of the stuff they used to get us to do, let me just unshare the screen. I'm gonna connect that. So if you understand some of the crazy stuff they used to get us to do in slavery, like, you know, I don't think there was any record of any plantation having more than 1,200 slaves, or some people prefer if I use the term enslaved Africans or enslaved people, whatever. There was never a plantation that had on record more than 1,200 folks working enslaved, right? But the largest enslavers were corporations, particularly railroad corporations. The larger, it was like the 7 top railroad corporations. I want to say that some of them had like 1,600, 1,200 was a common number. Like the lowest is like 400 to 700, something like that. Corporations own swaths of slaves, right? And some of the jobs they would get us to do, they would just get us to do the tough jobs, like being the brakeman or whatever. Just all the jobs that's the most risky. So if something happened, the train hit a bump and the Negro fly off the cliff and die, no problem. Just bring another nigger up there and put him over there, put him out there. You know, that's the kind of stuff they used to get us to do. And so when you understand how you tie that into mass incarceration, it's very clearly to see. So today, Joe Biden won't be asking for an exchange. Dude, you have a clear history of demonstrating that you are willing to like continue the legacy of Jim Crow era policies, and all the people who are part of that era transitioning into the war on crime, the war on drugs, the mass incarceration. Like that's today's iteration of that. You know, they couldn't use the language of the old days and the policy of those days. They had to transition. So you have a history of being part of that transition. And so when you comparing yourself to Trump, you say your record is Simone Sanders. Well, I put Joe Biden record against Trump record any day. Okay, I don't think you will. I don't think you will, because I don't think you'll win that argument necessarily. You might get some people to agree with you and want to because they don't like Trump, but you may not necessarily win that argument. So, like, how should we feel about that? Well, that's why we're asking for an exchange, because we can't necessarily see. You have to tell us to make it real. We can't see it based on your past.
That's right. That's right. So let me see. I had so much stuff I wanted to pull up, but I wanted to kind of go here because tonight I really wanted to focus on Donald Trump. I wanted people to know that we don't support Trump over here.
No,
we don't support Trump. And
let me say hell no.
And it's not necessarily a personal thing, right? We know about the racism and the racist things that he's done. I have an article pulled up that I might get into, but I want to get into this. Let me finish making my point. You can't guilt trip us into thinking or believing that if we vote for the nobody at the top of the ticket and we vote down ballot for our local politicians because nobody at the top of the ticket has anything tangible for us, you can't make us do that. You're not going to convince us of that. I've been called stupid. I've been called a whole bunch of names over just the past week alone. And so I start weighing stupidity, right? Well, let's weigh my stupidity against yours, right? So let's start running through Joe Biden's record. And I start weighing these. What are the things that you support? And they never have anything substantive to say. And they try to go to his black agenda. That's easy work. We chopped that up on the show I think that was last week or 2 weeks ago. That's not us. That's people of color. Look, let me prove it to you. Here, he's talking about, like I just said a few minutes ago, what he'll do specifically for people. And for us, it's, people of color. Well, hold up. Minorities. White women are included in the bracket of minorities. So where is this money that they want to allocate? We have to allocate such and such million or such and such billion to communities of color. Whoa, what does that mean? What does that mean, actually? Because we never seen none of that money under Obama. We didn't see any of that money under any of these presidential candidates. So I want to go here real quick because I showed Charlemagne and Trump because they keep saying that we are for Trump, but it seems like the people that they look up to who told the Democratic Party line, it appears as if they are the ones that are for Trump. So let's go here real quick. Let's go here real quick. Okay, this is Trump saying, I have so many African American friends that are doing great. Let's read a little bit of this real quick. After weeks of criticism over his attempts to reach out to African American voters, Donald Trump on Thursday professed to have so many African American friends who are, quote unquote, living the good life. Quote, I have so many African American friends that are doing great. They are making good money. They are living the good life. They've got the American dream going, end quote. The Republican nominee said Thursday on Fox News to quote to the O'Reilly Factor. It goes, now this is why he was still a nominee, so I could be clear. This was published September 1st, 2016. Then he returned to a familiar refrain. Quote, you have so many in poverty, and the crime is horrible, and the education is terrible, and they live terribly. And I say, what do you have to lose? What do you have to lose? He said, give it to me. I'm going to fix it. Now, of course, he's done none of that. But this language contrasts with a lot of the people who we'll find in media today that we call the gatekeepers. These are the people that are standing guard at the gate, the boule, if you will. I used to think Steve Coakley was bugging with that boule stuff until I started reading this book called Our Kind of People. And then I went back and rewatched his lecture on that. That brother wasn't joking at all. There really is a group out there trying to protect the king. So let's go to this real quick. I want to juxtapose what Trump says when he says, African Americans, I have so many of them that are doing great. Let's go to a familiar face, a talking head on the Democratic side of things, and hear what this person has to say. And this is Angela Rye. Let's hear what Angela Rye has to say in this regard. Hold on. Let me go back. Because I want everybody to hear this because this is important. This is important. Let me share this screen again. Add audio. I forgot to do that. I want you all to listen to this coming from Angela Rye.
In regard to
this is a debate that's being had on CNN about Trump and race and Kaepernick, et cetera, et cetera. And I want you to pay close attention to what Angela Rye says here.
I think in regard to the outreach to the African-American community, I think it's good that he is finally going actually to the African-American community. But I think at this stage, if we minimize the conversation to what he said or she said in years past or in weeks past or months past, we take away from the real issue here is what can the two of them do for the African-American community moving forward? Who has the policies that will help them economically, with education, with healthcare? And I firmly believe that Donald Trump's policies will be more beneficial to the African-American community. It's the way of how he articulates that is the question. I think he can also incorporate some of Jack Kemp's policies of empowerment, providing ladder to opportunity for them to lift themselves up out of their situation. He needs to work on the tone in which he can.
So that's part of the problem. So the fact that African Americans are talked about as monolithic entities is, we all need to pull ourselves up by our bootstraps when we were barefoot on plantations building this country for free is highly problematic to me. John, it's not about us needing to all be lifted out of poverty. I'm not impoverished, and I have several middle-class friends who are doing very well in this country. And so I reach the notion that we constantly need to be talking about. I'm just saying that we constantly need to be talking about.
I want to bring that back.
Several middle-class friends who are, John, it's not about us needing to all be lifted out of poverty. I'm not impoverished, and I have several middle-class friends who are doing very well in this country.
I'm not impoverished. I have several middle-class friends who are doing very well in this country. It sounded just like what I read from Donald Trump. Let me stop sharing here. That sounded exactly like what I just read that Trump said. I have so many African Americans that are doing good. The Trump policy, the woman that was Kelly McElhaney, whatever you pronounce her name, who is now the press secretary for the Trump administration, speaking about lifting them up, right? And Angela Rye rebuked that. She rebuked that coming from Kelly McElhaney, if I'm saying her name correctly, forgive me. But now Biden is pushing what is it called? Lift Every Voice Act. It's the same language. You just added a word. The same thing that the Trump administration was saying that they wanted to do. You had someone like Angela Rye pushing back on that. Now Biden is using the same exact language, and that's all it is. It's a bunch of empty promises, election cycle after election cycle. But I bet you Angela Rye is going to push that. She's not going to push back on that. And the audacity, while we have millions of us living in poverty, below the poverty line, the numbers that accompany our impoverished state as ADOS, as those of us who descend from American slavery are horrific. They're horrible. They are like a bad nightmare that you can't seem to wake up from. And for you to boast about you're financially okay and that you have friends that are doing well, and you have Donald Trump saying, I have African-American friends. Let me read that again. I have so many African-American friends that are doing great. The purpose of this show tonight was to make you all understand that none of these people have our best interest at heart. So if you ask me, is a non-vote for Biden a vote for Trump? I'm going to say no. Not voting for any of them. None of them deserve my vote. None of these politicians deserve my vote, except the people at the local level who are trying to do things to make my community better. And I'm going to vet every candidate that's running to make sure that they're going to do what they promised that they're going to do on the campaign trail, or if they're not talking something, and if they're talking the same old rhetoric that I've been hearing since I was a child, I know not to vote for that person and to put my weight and my voice, however strong or weak that voice is, behind a candidate that will do something for our people. So, Brother Josh, if you wanted to add on to that, I had to get to that because I wanted to show that there is a repeat of the language happening on both sides of the aisle, and it's the political theater that's happening. And we are, as spectators, we're just caught up in the audience. And the commentators, real quick, if you watch boxing, right? For those of you who follow boxing, very, very racist sport. I actually have an idea where I want to bring some of the brothers that do what they call new media, black media on YouTube, and have them come on one day and talk about the racism that's in boxing. It's very, very racist institution. But HBO's boxing channel failed because they started to become so biased in their push for a great white hype that whenever their quote unquote white fighters would be on, Triple G, Gennady Golovkin, or Vasyl Lomachenko, these great white hypes and great white hopes, and Lomachenko is nice. I won't call him a hype job at all. I think he's good at Triple G is a hype job. These guys could throw 5 straight punches that miss, and HBO commentators will be like, look at how beautifully he just strung those 5 jabs together. I'm like, wait a minute, he didn't even touch the guy. What are you talking about? So what the HBO commentators were doing was they were crafting the narrative for the watcher. So instead of just watching the fight, you're listening to the excitement of Jim Lampley's unforgettable voice. He's been the voice of boxing for the past 20, 30, about past 30 years. So his voice is so ingrained in that. This is what's happening in media right now. You have commentators who are trying to interpret what's being said in the way that it appears harmless. This is what Al Sharpton was put on MSNBC to do, to interpret for Obama. We will not criticize Obama, is what Al Sharpton said. And he didn't. He pretended like he may have pushed back on some weak thing here or some weak thing there, but never on the things that Dr. Cornel West or Tavis Smiley pointed out. Go ahead, Brother Josh.
Yeah, just to kind of push back on what Angela Rye was talking about, you know, and even addressing Trump, you know, you got to understand like what middle class means. Let's just go to this. I had some other articles. I couldn't find what I wanted to demonstrate middle class. So let's just go to the commonly used go-to move everybody use, which is just Wikipedia, right? With the definition of middle class. As of the 2010 census, Black households had a median income of $32,000, which places the median Black household within the second income quintile. Understand, quintile is you breaking things down by 20%. Now, middle class means you're in the middle, 50%, you know, around that area of America, right? So our median is in America's 20 to 40% level, max. 27% of Black households earn income between $25,000 and $50,000. 15.2% earn between $50,000 and $75,000. 7.6% earn between $75,000 and $100,000, and 9.4% earn more than $100,000. See, the only reason I don't like this particular data set is because we need to know about millions and on up. But this is just showing you, like, we have hardly no. If you compare that to white America, they have a way more people that's up in 100,000. Way fewer people in between 50. A way smaller percentage, you know, we have so few people at the top. Let me go down to this, and this is talking about home ownership and all this kind of stuff, the history. But, you know, this is what I want you to understand right here. 14 million of the 14 million Black households in the U.S. in 2015, only 5% had more than $350,000 in net worth, and less than 1% of Black families had over 1 million in net assets. And if you compare that to white America, I think they got like 15 million families or something over $1 million. You know, something crazy like that. I don't have that exact one in front of me either. But that's what, like, we need that addressed, and we don't need you know, people like your Angela Rye and those people trying to do make those type of statements, because that undermines. I think part of the problem is you got a lot of people who are speaking for us, but they're really like careerists. This is broken down. I think it was Yvette or Tone. I can't remember. I was watching the other day. These people are in it for their job. They're in it for their careers. They're not really in this thing for advocating for me and you. They're in this thing to be on TV. They're in this thing for, you know, to continue their work of what they want to do. They want to be in that limelight and they want to get their check. Like, they're looking for the next play. But don't mistake those people as somebody that's advocating for you. Like, you know, I look at somebody like Joy Reid. What was she? She was on like the Griot or the Root, something like that. And she was interviewing people. I remember she was going at Tavis Smiley like crazy when he was talking about Obama. And now look at her. She done moved up to MSNBC. Go ahead. Now you done moved up.
Mm-hmm.
You know, these people are not here to be your voice. These people are here to kind of just do their own thing.
That's right.
You know, we just need to see that and understand that that's going to be a problem. So I hope Charlemagne is not one of those. I hope he's in it for real. But, you know, time will tell. Either way, like this is another thing too. If y'all watching this out there, what we're about is not I'm talking about be the power, and I'm talking about those who really is like really for this collective uplift work. We're not just here today during the election cycle and to get some type of alternative agenda or whatever, some ulterior motive, I should say, and then we're nowhere to be found. Like after that, this that's like the reason why we came together, because we this is in us for real. Like this is all we talk about. This is something that we always felt about, for years, and after this, we still gonna be putting in that work, and we hope y'all about that life too, because that's what it's gonna take. If we realistic, is Joe Biden gonna do reparations? All this stuff we talked about, very unlikely. It's somewhere on the scale between hell no and very unlikely, right? So then what? Well, we got to keep moving. So that's another thing. If let's say Joe Biden wins anyway, and then what do we do? Right? Then what do we do? Well, we have to find another way to put pressure on him. But right now, we have the leverage of the vote. If we don't have the leverage of the vote, it makes things way more difficult. Now we have to start finding these events. We're going to need something miraculously terrible to happen to us, with us. We need to see, like, we have to have something, another cataclysm, really, to get the attention, to captivate, to make the case within the Biden presidency, to get the leverage on him, to make him have to do something. Again, we're going to use the example of A. Philip Randolph. Now, I know that's just way deep into the story. We're not getting into that. I need to study that story more, to be honest with you. But we know the story about how he got FDR to act to desegregate the military.
Mm-hmm.
He threatened to put pressure on the system. That was during the presidency.
That's right.
FDR wasn't trying to do that. The whole reason why he got the Southerners to agree to do the New Deal was he agreed to cut us out. So he wasn't trying to give us anything. So what happens if Biden wins? What do we do then? We have to figure out a way to put pressure on him and have some other way of gaining leverage. I don't know. We have to figure that out. We're going to have to take something, and that's probably something we shouldn't even put out there like that. That's something we might want to just have to go underground with at that time. But right now, we got the leverage. We got the leverage, which is our vote. If you're going to vote for Biden, at least ask him for an exchange. At least stop fighting us asking him for an exchange. And y'all blue checks out here and in the media, how can you turn and face your people and tell them you didn't be a voice for us? You didn't act in our best interest and ask and demand policy from him, whether it be reparations or just that black agenda items, something. But you can't just get nothing that when you have all the power. That doesn't make no sense.
That's right. But they always tout this black voting power, right? It's supposed to be so powerful, and yet we get nothing. Politics is an exchange, not a gift. That is the ADOS mantra. And we've been gifting votes for generations. It's time to cut that out. I mean, those that follow the channel know that I follow the real Moorish movement, and the real founder of that movement, Noble Drew Ali. He even spoke about that all the way back in the 1920s, about us being forced to just vote for some party and basically not our own interests. And that was supposed to stop then. That was supposed to stop then. And we didn't get the political education that we needed. Even with King, he faced so many obstacles. I urge everybody to read his book. Where do we go from here? Chaos or community? Obviously, we went to chaos. We didn't go to community. That book was a roadmap and a blueprint from a plan, a solutions level. Let me say that. A plan that will bring about solutions to a philosophical ideology. like that was that book is almost our Marxist manifesto, if you will, about communism. And nobody's like, I first heard the book when Roland Martin was debating some dude on Fox News that had a shiny bald head that was just going hard against reparations. Like, dude was going crazy. You think the white man, like some old Carlton from the Fresh Prince type dude, you think the white man is going to be accepting of us just giving black people reparations? Oh, please stop that. I'm like, yo, who this Poindexter dude just going in? So Roland Martin was, breaking down to him like, have you read this? Have you read Martin Luther King? Where do we go here? Chaos and Community. And I'm like, And then that became one of the books in the ADOS book club. So I was like, okay, I got to get on that ASAP. And I listened to it on Audible, and I knew then that it was a manifesto to help. There were some things I disagree with. There were some things that I disagree with, but that's like John Henry Clark, the great Afrocentric scholar, said, the job of the next generation of scholars is to stand upon our shoulders and get it right. Basically, keep perfecting the thing. And after King and Malcolm's death, there was no real movement in that regard at all. The closest we had was Farrakhan, but I mean, at the end of the day, it was really just a bunch of fiery rhetoric. I lauded the Million Man March. Honors, that was powerful, gathering all of those people together, but it brought about nothing. Insofar as any policy prescriptions, people just went right back to their neighborhoods. Bloods and Crips, their beefs ceased for a moment, but then cops would get in undercover unmarked vehicles and throw on red and blue, and ride through a blue neighborhood and shoot, and then the same cops would throw on blue and ride through a red neighborhood and shoot, reigniting. So nothing came out of it. It was like so many toothless tigers. A lot of the stuff hasn't had any bite up until now. I view this ADOS movement as the new civil rights movement. It is civil rights 2.0. And those of us that practice Islam to whatever degree, right? Because some people practice differently. I like to say that we represent the Malcolm X side of that civil rights movement. We just still trying to find our feet because everything is so convoluted today. The people that got the sharp thinking minds are into a whole bunch of Afro diasporic mumbo jumbo that it's not moving the needle for us here. It does nothing for us politically. It's just a bunch of good sounding rhetoric. It's like Jesus in the Bible saying faith without works is dead. Like, what's the use of knowing this stuff if you can't apply it, if it's not applicable? And if it's not applicable, then all of what you're saying can't be so deep if it can't be applied. So, I mean, we wanted to get on here tonight and show that we're not going to vote out of fear. We've lived under Trump. I lived through Reagan, Bush, both Bushes, Clinton, Obama. I lived under Trump. Y'all's obsession with that man, I think he's an idiot. I was gonna be honest with you. That's what I think. I think he's an idiot. I think, matter of fact, let me go here real quick. I ain't even gonna read no more tonight, because we're gonna close it out in a little while. Let me go here real quick, because I think this is vital to understanding something that Trump did. I want to show people that we are not for Trump, and y'all are not gonna make, because we are aware of what this man has done and what he's doing, right? Okay, Trump's dangerous judicial legacy. This is published by the UCLA Law Review, June 13, 2019. It says as much attention has been focused on scrutinizing President Trump's two appointments to the United States Supreme Court, a more pervasive and insidious effort by President Trump to remake the federal judiciary has gone relatively unchallenged. Our collective obsession with the nation's highest court and its shifting ideological balance since the retirement of longtime moderate Justice Anthony Kennedy, while important, has allowed a less notable but no less important shift to occur in the judiciary as a result of Trump's record-setting pace of appointments to the lower federal courts. Aside from their obvious politics, most of Trump's judicial appointees share something else in common. They are almost all white and largely male. This is no mere coincidence. It is a seemingly deliberate attempt to undo decades of diversity progress on the federal judiciary made over the course of multiple successive presidential administrations across both political parties. For all the hand-wringing over President Trump's two appointees in the Supreme Court, the president has quietly appointed more judges to the federal appeals court in his first 2 years in office than any other president in history. Given that so few cases will ever be heard by the Supreme Court, these courts often represent the highest level of appeal in our federal judicial system. In addition to being prolific, there is a striking pattern to Trump's judicial appointees. He has broken with the decades-long presidential tradition of making the judiciary more demographically diverse than one's political predecessor. Instead, Trump has appointed fewer minority judges to the federal bench than any president since Ronald Reagan, and fewer women judges than any president since George H.W. Bush. For the first time in nearly 3 decades, the federal bench has actually become appreciably less diverse. I really didn't understand that word appreciably used in that sentence in context of that word, but I mean, some UCLA law review person wrote this. They're smarter than me. Let me continue. It says, even as the nation has continued to experience rapid growth in its demographic diversity, the truculence about America's growing cultural pluralism that is reflected in Trump's federal judicial appointments is resonant with the central theme of his now infamous campaign promise. Notwithstanding the facile appeal to patriotism, we know what that means, white supremacy, there is a considerable proof that what Trump really aims to do is not, quote, make America great again, end quote, so much as, quote, make America white again, end quote. At least insofar as his efforts is to remake the judiciary are concerned. So basically this article is breaking this down. There was
he MAGA'd the courts. That's what you're saying.
He what?
He MAGA'd the courts.
He MAGA'd the courts up. It's just, there was, okay, let me see. This was something that I want. I want
to jump in. I want to jump in real quick.
All right, go ahead, bro.
So, because I see a comment here that says Trump is doing the judicial work that Obama did. I'm not sure exactly what you mean by that, but I've heard some stuff when people say something like that, and not to twist. Like I said, I don't know what you mean, but I want to say that we're very critical of Obama. And one thing we got to understand that what happened was with Obama is, and we don't use this excuse for anything else, but the Republicans obstructed Obama from appointing anybody to those courts like crazy. And maybe he didn't fight back hard enough. But when Trump got in office, how many seats? He filled like 100 court seats of federal judge appointees, including the Supreme Court. He filled like over 100 seats in the courts. And that wasn't necessarily because Obama didn't fill them. It's because Senate Republicans blocked. They actually had both houses of Congress, and they blocked Obama from appointing any judges. And another thing I gotta say though, before I hand it back to you, is when people hit you with this is damaging. This is very damaging. This is very damaging. This is terrible, and this is showing it a problem with the Trump, presidency. See, at least Biden is saying he's gonna put like a sister on the Supreme Court, and that's good. That's better than what Trump is doing, which is he's bleaching.
Better than what Obama did.
Yeah. That's better than even Obama.
He does it, if he's even elected.
Yeah, but Trump is bleaching the courts. He's bleaching the courts, and he's bleaching them and putting red MAGA hats on top of their head. But one of the things that still, even like if you look past that, we still have, it's like, you know, when you're appointing judges, there's always an unspoken litmus test. Until it got to Trump, then he had a overt litmus test. You know, he even told you what his litmus test was. But we need to have a litmus test too. If he's gonna do it and he's gonna do it for white supremacy, we need to do it for ADOS. And we should already have judges in mind that we should be knowing to and be pushing for them to appoint, pushing for them to put on the Supreme Court. And because the consequence of not doing that is you get somebody like Sotomayor, and I don't know them personally. I'm not too versed on their dissents or whatever, you know, their history. All I know is the Civil Rights Act of 1866 was unanimous decision. That's all I know. And that's what Obama Supreme Court appointees. All I know is they did not one of them dissented. So are we gonna act like that? Like the federal judges, the Supreme Court judges is like that dire? It is very important. It is very important. But still, I mean, damn, we couldn't get any of the liberal judges to dissent.
That's right.
Side on the front, you know.
I want to jump in real quick. I just want to, because you making me go back to this point, right, of what's being said, and at that point that you bring up is excellent. That these Obama appointees, when Byron Allen was at the Supreme Court fighting for, it wasn't just his company to have access, it was all of us to have access. And he just has the wealth to do that battle. It's important to understand that Obama's judicial appointees, they all agreed with the conservatives. Like this, to me, this is just a continuation of white supremacy power structure. So I want to go back to something that I was reading in the UCLA law review, because one of the arguments that I keep hearing, I've heard Roland Martin say this, I've heard several quote unquote black talking heads and pundits say this, I've heard many people, regardless of their ethnicity or race, using that term, say this. You know, if RBG dies, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, we don't want Trump appointing another conservative. Well, first and foremost, there are already 5 conservatives on the Supreme Court. It's a 5-4 majority, conservatives over liberals, first and foremost. So that argument doesn't fly in the face of those of us who know. But I want to go back and read something from this UCA law review. Let me read the article again. Trump's dangerous judicial legacy, that I think may have flew over some people's heads. It says, given that so few cases will ever be heard by the Supreme Court, these courts often represent the highest level of appeal in our federal judicial system, meaning a lot of cases don't go to the Supreme Court. They stop right there at the federal level. So all of this talk about making sure that Ruth Bader Ginsburg doesn't die or Trump doesn't get reelected so that when she does die, she doesn't get replaced by some conservative, doesn't matter. This dude just stacked the deck. Don't let them get y'all with that argument, because this is how they get us. They fool us. They trick us to vote against our interests every single time.
And I want to add, that goes both ways. You know, that goes both ways. So like, you already have people out here taking what we're saying, which is we demanded an exchange, that, you know, we need a black agenda. You have people out here spinning that into somehow twisting into saying that, well, we voted for Trump. Like demanding that agenda is giving Trump another 4 years. Don't let them twist you into that either. You know, because think about this. why are those people that are promoting Trump, why are they not bringing Trump to account for bleaching the federal courts, for putting white supremacist judges and all these racist conservative judges in place? Should he not have a now? Keep in mind, it was Donald Trump's Department of Justice who wrote the amicus brief and pushed the side on the side of Comcast as opposed to civil rights, as opposed to black folks. So I don't understand how a person can be talking about Trump without holding him to account on that. His administration basically nullified. It made the Civil Rights Act of 1866 basically the section that allows us to right to contract without discrimination. Basically, it made the but-for standard instead of the motivated factor standard. He made that Civil Rights Act impossible for us to use. So are we not going to hold him to account for that? So y'all got to think about all this stuff. Stop letting people push you to, you better vote for this and you better vote for this. No, you need to vote for your agenda, which is we're talking about collective agenda, collective public. We're demanding a collective agenda. If you don't know what the agenda is, go to ados101.com/black. Let me just go so y'all can see real quick. Here we go. I'm not going to go through it. I'm just going to show you what it looked like right here. ados101.com/black agenda.
While you're pulling that up, somebody in the chat, let me put this up on the screen, says, we can pressure our senators to vote against Trump's judges, but Republicans have the majority. I really don't think.
Go ahead.
I don't think that we can pressure our senators to do anything at this point. We just have to be honest. Number one, we don't have a strong enough, as ADOS particularly, we don't have a strong enough voting bloc to do that. We don't have strong enough coalition to do that. My brother Ali Bey is in the building.
Peace, Ali.
Peace, y'all. That's kind of what I was going to touch on, exactly what she was talking about, because I had actually made a post about the reason that Trump was able to make so many appointments to the federal courts. I'm sure you guys saw it because I tagged y'all in it the other day. But I just wanted to read about that because the brother that made the comment that Trump was making the appointments or doing the judicial work that Obama didn't do, we got to understand something. Obama lost his majority in Congress almost 2 years after into his first, the first portion of his presidency. So once he lost the House, he subsequently lost the Senate, and the Senate are the people. The Senate is where the confirmations occur whenever a president appoints someone to the federal court or to the Supreme Court or whatever. So let me just read from this particular article that was done on Brookings.edu. It says here that Trump inherited 88 district and 17 Court of Appeals vacancies. The reasons for the vacancies was the flimsy confirmation record in the 2015-16 Senate with its new Republican majority. See, this is what we were talking about. Just as it refused to consider Merrick Garland's Supreme Court nomination, it shut down the lower court confirmation process. So when Obama was trying to make his confirmations, the Senate shut all of his confirmations down. So you're talking about close to 100 vacancies in the federal court that when Obama left, that was left open for Trump to then come in. The problem is you have a majority Senate. You have a majority Senate. And so when people are making the claim that we have to put Biden in, and particularly people like Roland Martin, they use the argument that because the president makes these appointments to the federal court, I'm like, well, if you don't flip the Senate, and it continues to be a Republican majority, and let's just say you lose the House, because mind you, all of these things, every seat in the House is up for election. A lot of people may not know that. But if the Democrats lose control of the House, forget the House for a second, but if they lose control of the House, you got a problem. If the Senate stays Republican control, Biden is going to be in there the same way that Obama was in there, trying to appoint presidents and having trying to appoint federal judges and having them rejected by the Senate. He's not going to be any more effective than what Obama was.
That's
once
right.
Obama lost that Congress like that.
That's right. So that idea that Biden is going to come in and be this effective person Merrick Garland is a prime example that if you don't flip the Senate, and this is what one of the things that we're stressing here on Be the Power on this platform is that we have to become so involved in local politics. Me and my bros, we talk every single day, and it is one of our main item agendas, right? This plan on how to bring local politics to the forefront of our political minds, as opposed to getting caught up in this gladiator style presidential, like it's gladiator TV at the end of the day. That's why I use Biden and Trump in the thumbnail, like they both got their fists up. It's how they capture us. They put it on the news, they plaster it all over newspapers, and we become drawn into it. It's reality TV. So whether you like to watch the reality TV on some channel showing Sister Wives or the Black Housewives of Atlanta, etc., it doesn't matter. This is not an ethnic thing. People are caught up into reality TV. And this is what presidential elections have become. And we have to become militant in our stance insofar as pushing for voter registration and voter drives, etc., in our neighborhoods, or else, we're just no better than Joy Reid and them people and Charlemagne and them talking on their respective channels. So, and that's not what we're going to do. We're going to make some noise. And that's a fact. So,
right, and people too need to keep in mind when they're pushing these arguments about the court system and how the president gets to appoint judges. You got to keep in mind that most criminal cases are adjudicated in state courts. So all of that stuff that they're using to, as far as I'm concerned, are scare tactics, and they're based in the idea that most Black folks are low information people when it comes to being intelligent voters. So see, they know this. And so what they're trying to do is really control the way that you approach this whole thing. And they're using fear to try to drive the traffic towards voting for Joe Biden, even though the man really has nothing to offer our people. Right. So, you know what I'm saying? So I just think that it's important to point out that there are so many different races that are happening happening in November. There are going to be a lot of elections, not just the president. Like I said, every seat in the House. There are a number of seats in the Senate that's up for election. You have a number of gubernatorial races happening in November. You have a bunch of state legislatures that are where the seats are up for election. You have a bunch of city councils that are where the seats are up for election. You have mayoral races, like 414, I believe, mayoral races around the country. So, but they're not talking about any of that. The only thing they're telling our people is that we have to elect Joe Biden. And that's just not how this is supposed to work at all. Not at all. And so I just wanted to point that out, fellas, that, there's a lot that they don't have our people looking at. These gatekeepers, these Roland Martins, the Angela Rye's, all these people, they're not getting our people to look at things the way they need to look at things. And then they're pushing back against those of us who are trying to get our folks looking at stuff in a more broader way. You know what I'm saying? So I just want to say that, bros.
I'm thinking about dropping a mixtape. It's the only way people gonna listen. I still got some bars too. I'm just saying, I ain't playing on that. I ain't joking at all. I could still spit crazy.
No doubt.
But, if I gotta find a way to get the people to listen, and if I gotta do that, I would. I really, really would. But we got to get them to listen, and our people are so stuck on celebrity that Oh, maybe I might have to put it in some. I might have to put it in some lyrics to get them going. I don't know, but we have to make a push for local politics. Just to bring it back to the purpose of this show. We are not gonna vote against our own interests anymore.
Man, I had a brother. I had a brother damn near curse me out for suggesting that we pay attention to state and local politics this election cycle. He was like, "Man, that's a bunch of bull." I was like, "Whoa, wait a minute, what?"
It's crazy. It's crazy.
Yeah. I mean, everything is going to have to have a foundation in state and local politics. This is a national election cycle. Yeah. I mean, it deserves its attention. And, if you look at historically, we got major policy and major change we look from emancipation, you look at the Civil Rights Act. It took the federal government, you look at desegregating schools, it took the federal government to take the lead on that policy. Without having any type of power or control in the state or any type of influence to make that work for us in our everyday lives where we actually live at, you would have to have so much of a serious amount of resources committed to you as far as the federal government is concerned to make them do it, to enforce it, to make them implement that. It's like working backwards almost. It's like we have to do both. We have to have state politics on lock. We need to have local politics on lock. And understand these are not easy fights. So we talking about like states where some of these states still have white supremacy codified in their language, in their constitutions and stuff like that. This is not easy. This is not an easy fight. Like what we're talking about will be the power. This is the long game, man. That's what I think a lot of people don't understand. We only get interested because you're getting all your information from mainstream media, and we don't understand this. Like reparations is the goal, and it's the long game. And Black agenda, but it's also we still have our Black agendas that we need to implement it on a local level too. Like what were we building on earlier, bro? We were talking about New York City, like how the cops is doing, and lack of Second Amendment rights and things like that's local, particular to that area.
That's right.
Everybody doesn't have that problem, that those people have. So you have to take that fight, and that needs to be your agenda-based politics locally. This is a YouTube program, and this is reaching a broad audience. So we're talking national politics. So we're talking about ADOS101.com/Black agenda. That's a Black agenda. That's what we're talking about as far as our national agenda. But you got to get together and get organized and get some power. Where are Black governors in Black states?
Where are the governors? Where are our ADOS governors at?
Yeah, ADOS governors.
Not one. Where are they? Like in many ways, we're going backwards, bro. It's not that Trump is making America quote unquote white again. Like there are things that are happening that we are not really paying attention to. They got us so caught up in the general election and presidential politics that we're missing. And like I said, outside of making a mixtape, we don't know how to get other people involved, right? How do we get the streets involved? How do we, you know what my terminology is, they are a untapped oil field, and we need to set up some political derricks, if you will, and start churning out that oil and getting these people to the polls. We are out of 100% of us who are eligible voters, only 12.5% actually vote. That's in any election. Those numbers are crunched. My brother, Dr. Logic pulled that up. I don't have that stat in front of me. He did this the other day. It's like, well, how? Out of 100% of eligible voters, only 12.5% of us actually get to the polls. We have to create a whole new electorate. We have to create a whole new 12.5% and up. Like, we have to become really, really active in our push. This is why Be the Power set this platform up. We want to help get our people, particularly ADOS, because one of the things that Sister Yvette Carnell stresses, she says, when we're talking about reparations and ADOSness, the specificity is for ADOS, the people who descend from American slavery. But the Black agenda is for everybody that falls under that flat category of Blackness. So that's where the people from outside of the tribe come in, and we come together just as American citizens to make the proper moves. But we just at the point where we're no longer going to be mules, to use that term, for the Democrats, and we're not going to be, definitely not going to let the Blexic folk trick us into coming over there. That's not going to happen. And so we got to become more vocal. We don't have people with the capital to put us opposite of a Candace Owens. I would shut Candace Owens down.
Yeah, go back and peep our show if you didn't go, if you haven't already, that we did on Candace Owens.
Yeah, peep the show we did on Candace Owens. Again, hit like, people. Hit the bell icon.
We go hit
like.
We're
trying to grow the channel. We're trying to do something. We're trying to expand this conversation. Reparations is it's the topic of conversation. It's not a topic that we're going to let die once the general elections is over with. It is a topic that is going to be pushed ad nauseum, ad infinitum, to use those legal terms, and we're going to keep going with it. So, yeah. Brother Ali, did you want to? We passed the 2-hour mark. Did you want to add anything before we close out? And Josh, I'm gonna come back to you, and then I'll just take us up out of here.
No, I just want to say that I was listening, and you guys did a great job as usual.
Honest,
and
bro.
You know, I appreciate y'all, man, and looking forward to the next show. That's about it, bro.
Definitely, brother Josh.
Yeah, I just want to say, you know, this was another great show. You know, I want to encourage everybody to go back and watch our past shows. We did a show on Are We a Minority Ethnic Group? And we broke down ethnicity, race and ethnicity, and we broke down America's income, a median income by ethnic group. And basically we showed that if you look at us, ADOS, as a specific ethnic group, we are the second largest ethnic group in America. We're not actually a minority, you know, and we talked about whiteness, how racism, I don't know if we said this explicitly, but how racism is the unity of whiteness. So when people try to tell you ADOS is divisive, you got to understand, let them know that, yeah, but racism is unifying. It's the unifying of whiteness. So if you want to break racism, we need to be very specific, and we need to be divisive. You know, that's what we need to understand. So I would encourage everybody to go watch that program. We had, you know, Dr. Sandy Darity, who gave us props on, he retweeted us and gave us a salute on one of our shows. We were surprised that the brother even watched the show. I mean, but so I had to pat us on the back for that, you know, just because it's good to get
Dr. Darity, man. That was a huge endorsement, man. I really appreciated that.
Yeah, I appreciated that from Dr. Darity. You know, I want to encourage everybody to go. Yvette hasn't announced the book of the month for the ADOS group that follows her, Breaking Brown Goats. Like, subscribe to her page. She hasn't announced the book, but
oh, she has.
Oh, she has. What
yeah.
book?
Damn, I was just looking at it.
Medical apartheid.
No.
Okay.
I was just looking at it earlier. If I'm not mistaken, she has announced it. I don't think it was.
Help me out, y'all in the chat. Which book did she say? Which book did she announce for the book of the month?
Yeah, if anybody knows what book Yvette Carnell announced for the next book club, put it in the chat, please.
Either way, I want to encourage everybody to go and and get this book by Dr. Sandy Darity. It's called From Here to Equality. From Here to Equality. It's on Amazon. You can get the book. I would recommend everybody read this book. It's very, very powerful. It's not,
yeah, something on immigration, Jay Isaac.
Okay. Oh yeah.
About immigration. That's exactly. I just seen it earlier.
Word. Well, in addition to that, I want to tell everybody to get this book right here. This book is it's strong, and one of the we're gonna go through this. Hopefully we'll be able to get if we're less than highly favored, we'll be able to get Dr. Darity on the show.
That would be powerful.
Yeah, but either way, I want to discuss this book because I know in one part of the book, especially towards the end of the book.
Oh, yeah, that's the name of it. On my bag, Josh. Immigration and the Remaking of Black America.
Okay, Immigration and the Remake of Black America. Yeah. I heard her talk about maybe doing that one. Okay, that was among the ones that people were asking about. Cool. So I'm looking forward to getting that one too. But get that Dr. Darity book too, especially if you're having a reparations conversation with people, because he has a section in that book where he breaks down like he overcomes all the reparations objections. You know, people throw out these little, he throw up these little weak layups to try to tell you, well, my ancestors didn't enslave people. I shouldn't have to pay. Or, I just moved here as an immigrant. I shouldn't have to pay. Or, that was a long time ago. The Civil War. He's like Matumbo, just swatting those joints with the finger. You know what I mean? And that will empower you in that conversation. So I would definitely recommend everybody get that book. But, I just want to thank everybody for tuning in. And we look forward to having a conversation with y'all. Back to you, bro.
Definitely. Honest, brother. Honest to my bros. Honest to the Be the Power team. Honest to the ADOS family. Again, we came on here tonight to make a case and to show people that we will no longer abide by this puppeteer and puppet phenomenon that has been going on in politics, particularly politics amongst our people who are called Black here in America for generations. We have cut those strings because we didn't know any better, but we know now. And we are growing in our education, and we will no longer be fooled by people that look like us, that they push out in the forefront. Again, I brought this sister's name up, and I'm going to bring it up again. This sister, Avis DeJoyner Weaver, who blocked me on Facebook a couple of weeks ago because I was debating her Joe Biden stance. She's a regular on Roland Martin's show, and none of her arguments, none of them could hold up to the arguments that I was making. And instead of giving me sound rebuttals, she would wait for her people to come on and say, oh, he doesn't know what he's talking about, sis. He doesn't know. Just ignore them, sis. And her putting, yeah, I know, right? And a bunch of emojis or some memes was the response to the data and the statistics and the historicity, the records, et cetera, that I just always flood these threads with. That's something I've been used to doing anyway, just as my research as a Moorish scholar. So when we hear these people try to pigeonhole us and vote along a party line and not vote our interests, it's time for something to awaken in us, particularly as we speak about creating a whole new voting bloc out of ADOS in America and those who are allies to our cause, right? Those who suffer along with us in this American society as well, if they do, and those who do not suffer, those who sympathize with our plight here. We are saying that this new crop will never, ever be rocked back to sleep, because there are many Malcolms and there are many Martins among you now. And we are all heading upward because that's where it was going anyway. Malcolm and Martin were eventually going to meet at the top, but Malcolm went first and then King went second, unfortunately. And the movement was left without leadership. It was left without guidance. It was left without spiritual guidance coming from the Malcolm side of it and his fiery rhetoric, which started to become more and more political as you listen to speeches like Message to the Grassroots and the Ballot or the Bullet, to the political guidance coming from a spiritual man like Martin Luther King Jr., Prophet Noble Drew Ali, whom I follow, called his movement a divine and national movement, meaning our spiritual practices, our wanting to become better versions of ourselves were not separate and depart from our political actions and the activity needed so that we could become players and have a seat at the table, or as the Prophet Noble Drew Ali would say, take our place in the affairs of men. The time for tricking us and manipulating us is over. And we wanted to get on here tonight to emphasize that nothing that you say, nothing that any of you say will ever put us back to sleep. And so long as you are out there trying to convince people to go one way, we're going to be in your way every step of the way. Every thread we see you on, every video you make, every tweet you make, every post you make, we're going to be on you because we're not going to let our people go to sleep. Would I endure another 4 more years of Trump so that I could get reparations and my people can get reparations in 24? Oh, you damn right I will. That's a fact. So I don't care what you people say, because if not, Biden is not going to do anything for us. He has no plan for us at all. So I'm going to close out by saying our usual mantra here at Be the Power, and that is don't just fight the power, become the power. And then you will have the power to make a change. And with that, I say peace.